and he gave it up. You would have never heard Martin Luther King. He told them, no, not me. I shouldn't be the one giving the speech. It should be that minister from the South who's leading
never heard that.
the bus boycott. So Martin Luther King was selected to give that speech, and it became the speech of the century almost.
Well, let's move to the state. I mean, in the state of Delaware, who were some of the folks in this transformed our state in civil rights?
Lewis Redding, Littleton Mitchell, Senator Holloway, Ray Evans. Let's see. Oh, there's a lot of women. Oh my Lord, the women that were involved in the civil rights movement were quite substantial. But you had a lot of people. Right. I mean, it wasn't that you had one or two. And the other thing was, when we were young, we listened to these older people who actually helped us learn what we needed to know. And it wasn't about us calling them names or trying to make them, into something that they weren't. I learned a tremendous amount from all of those people that were involved back in the 60s and the 70s. A lot of them are gone now, but they were really, really great people. It's like Senator Holloway, if you knew him.
Yeah, absolutely.
One of the best speakers.
Oh, incredible.
As for a politician, nobody could beat him. He was the best politician I knew. And he was a funny guy, just like Al Plant was funny. You ever listen to Al Plant and his stories and all that? But you had these people who were characters, different. But the way they worked it was Senator Holloway and all of them would work with NAACP and Lou Redding and all of these people about what was it that they were after. And he gave tremendous speeches at the General Assembly. Because he was the only senator, and he was it, and he played the role very, very well. So I respect all of those older people that came before. You look at Helen Chambers. I admired Helen Chambers.
You mentioned her name a few times.
Right.
Ladies and gentlemen, Hicks Anderson.
Yeah,
Ladies and gentlemen,
Hicks Anderson.
if you just tuned in, we're having a great interview with Mayor James Baker. He very rarely give interviews, so we're very honored to have him in. We're going to talk about a number of different issues. Mayor, you talked
about. Would knock you out.
Yeah, I know he would. He grabbed me by the head a couple of times, give me one of those little hit things.
But he loved children.
Yeah, he did.
And a lot of people don't know, he wrote Title I.
Absolutely.
I mean, he was the main thinker of creating Title I, which is all over the country now. A national program came out of Delaware. If you look at Lula Nix and her husband in terms of DAPI, created right here in Wilmington, national programs modeled.
Wow.
We don't think about those things.
When you talk about some of the leaders, some of the stuff we just talked about.
Right.
What is your opinion now of like the Urban League, the local NAACP? Because you talked about
a lot of
Mitchell.
change needs to happen.
Are you frustrated, or are you?
Well, yeah. I mean, but a lot of changes have to happen. What happens with people and organizations? They get into a mold, and they're not looking around for what do you do to change our condition, and as African Americans. I don't care what people believe. It's in a terrible state of affairs. Whether you're talking about health, whether you're talking about education, whether you're talking about employment, whether you're talking about economics, poverty, all these things, it is horrible. And and the statistics prove it. And yet we pretend that somehow city government's going to change your life.
But how did we get? How did we get there, though?
We got there, I think, because if you really look at the civil rights movement, it was enormously successful. A lot of people don't believe that because people don't pay attention.
Right.
But here, let me show you an example. In 1948, what was the unemployment rate for African Americans?
I'm not even sure.
60%.
60%, wow.
In the country, 60%. Not 25, not 10, 15, 60%. And they couldn't identify another 20% as to what their real occupations were. So if you really look at it, that was 80% of the people, they weren't sure. 60% they were sure of unemployed, but 20% they weren't. So that only left 20% that you really could identify jobs with. that changed to where to now you talk about our unemployment rate is basically around 25% in Wilmington. So, I mean, an enormous shift took place over those years of the 40s, 50s, 60s into the 70s, and then it stopped. We had more people graduating from college, more people graduating from high school, more elected officials, more professionals, more jobs. All that was taking place during that period of time. And after the 70s, the regression started taking place because the country changed and eliminated program after program. Do you know how much money Wilmington has lost in the federal level that we used to get back in the 60s and the early 70s? You know how much money difference?
No.
$72 million.
That's a lot of money.
And you know what we get today? About 3 or 4 million.
Let's talk about that for a minute,
That's
Mayor.
CGGB too. That's not just general federal
Let's
programs.
talk about that for a second, Mayor.
Okay.
You were city councilman and president of city council when I was on there. Now I'm mayor for 12 years. When you look back, right, what would you say are some of your greatest accomplishments?
Survive.
I
guess.
I had to ask you, because
people
I
ask
mean,
me.
because you've had a lot of accomplishments. You know what I mean? And you don't like to toot it, but I mean, you.
No, I've created. I passed over 100 pieces of major legislation and programs. If you take WEDCO, if you take the housing gift program, if you take even the Wilmington Children's Course. I mean, there's just been programmed the historic districting, the Design and Review Commission, the Civil Rights Commission, the Ethics Commission, the Freedom of the Opening Sunshine Bill, the Riverfront, developing the Riverfront. So, I mean, there's been so many different programs that I have introduced that's still in existence. The DBD, the Disadvantaged Business Program, which was really the minority business program until the Supreme Court ruled you could not do that, and so we had to change it to Disadvantaged Business. But I wrote all of those, as well as the minority businesses programs. So
it's a lot.
Oh yeah, I believe that you're not elected to just sit there and listen to complaints. I mean, a lot of elected officials think that all you need to do is listen to, I got to call this, that, and the other. Well, there's a complaint system. By charter, the city has to have a complaint system. You got that in place. You don't need to be a complaints officer.
Right. When you look back,
you're a legislator if you're on council. You're an administrator if you're the mayor.
Right. When you look back, right, you talk about your accomplishments. What frustrates you? I mean, when you leave out, something.
What's frustrating is that you can't get the resources to address the problems. You just don't have it. I mean, look at the fact that we have 6 out of 10 kids attending school from Wilmington kids dropping out of school. 6 out of 10.
That's a lot.
We're the only city in the state that has 5 school districts operating within its boundaries, and we have absolutely nothing to do with it. We have no say over it. We have no finances, no authority, or whatever. They just operate in our city. It's wrong. We used to have a school district at least, but now we have everybody in here, and our kids are just dropping out. And let me point out that if a child dropping out of school has an 80% chance of going to jail versus a kid who graduates high school. Think of that, 80%. So now you're 6 out of 10, 80% chance going to prison, most of them will.
Wow.
Then when they go to prison, they get out. We get 90 people a month that come back to Wilmington from the prison system to live in Wilmington, and we have no real strong program to help them adjust to our society. They're just here. You got 2,000 people on probation living in our city, a 60% recidivism rate going back to prison, which means 1,200 people are going to commit another crime and return to prison.
You know, I had to.
I think we just don't understand how bad it is. And when you look at the unemployment, 25%, over 50% for kids. And you just keep going. Do you realize in our city right now, families with children. Do you know how many of them are headed by single women?